we are back. The Rory Sauter Show coming to you live from Palm Springs, California, broadcasting coast to coast worldwide. I do want to welcome to the show, we have a very popular guy, very famous. He has an incredible resume. He's lived a hell of a life. He's worked for President Trump. He has done so many things, a jack of all trades. He's doing a lot of things right now for Trump's reelection, for different things for the midterms for 2024 coming around. Michael Caputo, what a pleasure, what an honor, sir. I am a huge fan. I love everything you've done for this country. You are a true patriot, and your first time on, man. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. It's a very kind way to introduce me. I appreciate it. Am I really out of focus here?
I can see you. I can see you pretty well. It's a little blurred. I can see you.
Hey, you don't mind if I put my thumb on my camera for a second? Maybe it's that, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
much better. Much better. Now it's perfect, my friend. So, Michael, when people come on the show for the first time, I always kind of like to get a resume, get a background, how it all started for you, how you got to where you are now, and all that fun stuff.
Sure. I first got interested in politics in a foxhole on the DMZ in South Korea. I was a young man. I guess I was 17 when I went in the Army. In the 25th Infantry Division. And the guy I was in the foxhole with said that Ronald Reagan had just given us a raise. And I said, the president gave me a raise? And I became very interested at that moment and started reading more about politics. Up until then, I was pretty much on the road with the Grateful Dead most of my youth, and really didn't pay much attention to politics. But being on the DMZ, the first time I ever saw a Russian was through a pair of binoculars. Across the DMZ, a Russian general was visiting the North Korean post that we were staring at, probably on some ceremonial visit. First time I ever saw a Russian. And I came back when I got out of the Army. I went to university. I joined Young Americans for Freedom. And in the summertime, during summer break, I went to the Contra camps, and when they were fighting the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, and was helping with the Reagan doctrine of fighting communism. Graduated from college, went to Washington to work for. First off, I went to work for Human Events, a great newspaper, still a great newspaper, which is where Jack Posobiec is now.
Love him.
Yeah, he's great. He's a good friend.
Yeah, I follow him on Twitter every day. He is a great, source for information. Just tremendous insight.
I can't even understand where he gets all his information, but the man's brilliant. He's a good friend of mine. He's actually had dinner here at our house. And
very nice.
Good guy. And he's making Human Events great again. It was a great publication during the Reagan years. It's great again now with Jack there. But then I went on as a writer for Congressman Jack Kemp as he ran for president in the '88 race. He was my congressman back in Buffalo, a great man, also my quarterback in the Buffalo Bills. After Jack was defeated by George H.W. Bush, I went back down to Central America, worked in the Contra War again, spent some time in El Salvador, worked with the great Michael Waller. I don't know if you know who Michael Waller is, one of the great anti-communist foreign policy experts out of the Reagan era, still great, an incredible follow on Twitter as well, Michael Waller. And then I went to work with George H.W. Bush on his campaign as director of media services. I was 92, Bill Clinton beat us when we lost. I went deeper into politics, did some corporate work. I eventually went to work on the Trump campaign. I'm skipping over an important part. At least it was important to the Mueller investigation. From 1994 until 2000, I worked in the Kremlin. I was an advisor to Boris Yeltsin. I was sent there by the Clinton administration to meddle in the Russian elections. The irony is not lost on me. And I ran the USAID program teaching Russians how to run elections. I was responsible for the first draft of the Russian election law. And after I left U.S. government employee, I went to consult with the Kremlin and with a bunch of Russian candidates, lived there for a long time, Actually, had a couple of opportunities to meet Vladimir Putin. Was not my friend, not a very nice guy. And when he was became president in 2000 with the resignation of Boris Yeltsin, I came home to the United States. It became decidedly unsafe for American advisors of the Kremlin at that time. And went on to work in more politics, worked in the private sector for a while. And all that time, starting in 1988, I first met Donald Trump at the 1988 Republican Convention in New Orleans. Drove him around as a driver in Washington when I was working with Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. Worked with him off and on over the years. In the late, 2013, I tried to convince him to run for governor in New York. He declined, but that was a lot of fun. We traveled around the state together. It was his first taste of politics. And then 2014, he tried to buy the Buffalo Bills. I helped coordinate that. Lucky for the United States of America, the Buffalo Bills were bought at a very, very high price, way too expensive, way overpriced, and Donald Trump decided not to buy them and became president of the United States instead. I was the director of his New York State primary. When we won in New York, he brought me into the national campaign. I worked at the convention. And then after the inauguration, unfortunately, I got dragged into the Russia investigations. Cost us a lot of money. Cost my children their college fund. A lot of harassment, a lot of Antifa harassment. But after the Russia investigations failed, of course, because there was no collusion with Russia, it was all created by Hillary Clinton. We're finding that out now. We're going to find out a lot more of that from the Durham investigation. I provided evidence to the Durham investigation as well. I became Assistant Secretary of Health during COVID. The president called me up when COVID hit and said, Michael, we need you. Because he needed people he trusted, people he knew for a lot of years. I became in charge of public affairs as Assistant Secretary at the Department of Health and Human Services. I was the #1 communicator on COVID. Unfortunately, in September of 2020, I got cancer. The stress of all that stuff, the Russia investigations and then the COVID response, kicked in throat cancer, really bad case of it. But I'm now well. Living instead of New York or in Washington, I'm down in Florida, where Ron DeSantis knows how to deal with COVID, how to deal with Disney. And my family and I are very happy, safe, living well, and enjoying being in Ron DeSantis's Florida.
Wow, that was one hell of an introduction. That was quite impressive. I want to shift back just a little bit. There's a lot I want to ask you and touch on just off of what you just shared with us. But first off, let's talk about your time in the Kremlin in Russia, meddling in an election. I mean, that has to be some sort of crazy experience. Kind of how does that work? Kind of tell the audience about that.
Well, it was rather open. The United States put nearly, I think it was almost $1 billion into election-oriented consulting, as they called it. And it was run out of the embassy. We had the International Republican Institute was there. The National Democrat Institute was there. The International Foundation for Election Systems, I was the director of that because of my electoral system expertise. And we were advising candidates, advising the electoral system. It was very open. But we were also doing things behind the scenes, for example, excluding the Communist Party from anything we did. We only worked with parties that we supported, that we agreed with, only the democracy-oriented parties. I wouldn't have been happy working with the communists anyway, but we did things behind the scenes as well, and all of us in one way, shape, or form reported to the embassy, and the CIA sat in on most of those meetings. Fast forward to the 2016 election, they were accusing Vladimir Putin of meddling in the U.S. elections. I think they spent like $180,000 on Facebook ads or something like that. We spent damn near $1 billion to manipulate the Russian elections during the 90s, and probably more. What we spend now that Vladimir Putin doesn't allow that kind of chicanery, I don't know. But the United States meddled in Russia's elections far more than Russia meddled in ours in those days. And I think most world powers mess around in each other's elections. But it was a wild time. It was like, Russia in the 90s was like Paris in the 20s with Kalashnikovs and vodka instead of red wine. It was a crazy time. I was single. All my buddies were single. I worked with some of the greatest guys. I worked with a lot of people from around the world, French diplomats who I got to be really close with. And now, so many years later, still some of my friends. I worked a lot in Ukraine as well, did elections in Ukraine. I met my wife in Ukraine. We're happily married now. We're very concerned about the Ukrainian invasion by Russia and the slaughter by Vladimir Putin. While my time in Russia, I met Vladimir Putin first when he was deputy mayor of St. Petersburg. We were both at a forum that he attended a forum that my organization sponsored on election administration in St. Petersburg. And then I saw him again in Moscow several times. But one time he was actually in my house. I didn't know at the time he was in my house. I had a party to celebrate the ascension of the new chairman of the Russian Senate, the Russian Federation Council, who was a client of mine, a guy named Platonomov. And the photographer was running around taking photos in my fancy apartment. And I looked at the photos a couple days later, and the black and white photos, and one of them, Vladimir Putin, was leaning against the wall, drinking a glass of clear liquid, looking decidedly uncomfortable in an American's apartment. I didn't know he was there, and at the time he was head of the new KGB, the FSB, and I didn't know it. None of us knew. So yeah, I got around a lot in Russia. I spent a lot of time in Ukraine in those days, and it's a very different world there now.
And your experience with with meeting Putin, with being around him, I mean, what is that like? Tell.
Well, he didn't really talk much around foreigners. He certainly didn't talk much around Americans. I think I heard him say 10 or 12 words all those times I was around him. He was also in junior positions.
Yeah.
In fact, after I saw him at my apartment, it was before he became prime minister. So after he ascended to the number 2 position in the country, I never saw him again. If you know Vladimir Putin's history, and I do, he was a KGB officer and stationed in Dresden, East Germany, responsible for giving money to radical German terrorists who killed people. He was funding the murder and mayhem in Germany's nightclubs and train stations. I think it was the Red Brigade he was working with. So if you know his history, his present isn't all that surprising. The men around him now, many of them are KGB officers and people involved in the intelligence services in St. Petersburg when he was a young man in the 90s when I first met him. Those people are all billionaires now. He created billionaires out of intelligence agents. And what could possibly go wrong there, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And what do you make of what's going on with Ukraine and Russia right now?
I have a lot to say about that because I have family who are stuck there. We worry about them very much. When I think about the Ukraine situation, Russia's.
Michael, hold that thought real quick. We're going to be right back in 1 minute. Stay with us. Stay with us, everybody. We are back with Michael Caputo, Trump administrator, and we have a lot to discuss. Michael, as you were saying about Ukraine and Russia, tell us about your side of this and how you view all this.
Well, we have family there. My mother and father-in-law are there. My wife, we met when I was working on a campaign there.
Yeah.
She has, of course, all of her childhood friends and a lot of our colleagues from the years I was working there, the years she was working there. It's a terrible situation. She knows people, a lot of death and mayhem. I think about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and when I think about it, I see it in blue. When I say I see it in blue, it's because certainly in the earliest weeks of the invasion, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd wake up and there my wife would be looking at her phone, seeing if her parents were still alive. And our bedroom was lit up in the blue light of her phone. I think of the Ukrainian invasion. I see everything in blue. There's a lot of terrible things going on over there. People need to understand who Vladimir Putin is. I know we have on the right, we have a wedge that's been driven between us. There are a lot of people, friends of mine, people I know, who think that Vladimir Putin is defending his nation, that Ukraine doesn't deserve defense because they're corrupt. There's a lot. The most effective kinds of propaganda are always wrapped in just a little kernel of truth. Is Ukraine corrupt? Well, yeah, but every nation in Eastern Europe is corrupt. If you know who Hillary Clinton is, if you know who Hunter Biden is, you know the United States is corrupt. So certainly, I believe Ukraine is worth defending, not just because I know a lot of people there, but also people need to understand who Vladimir Putin is. He's not crazy. He's disordered. He's doing things that no normal person would do, slaughtering women and children, bombing cities all the way into the ground. He's turning Mariupol it's just going to be a gas station in the future. You may not even be able to rebuild that city. People need to understand that Vladimir Putin believes fundamentally that the Russian Orthodox Church is going to sanctify him as a saint. I'm not saying that as a joke. This is what is in Putin's head. He wants to be Saint Vladimir of the Russian Orthodox Church. It's something that he holds very deeply in his heart. He believes by reuniting Russia and Ukraine, Kiev and Rus, right? The Russian world, as they call it, Ruski Mir, that the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church will sanctify him after his death. He will be a saint. He will be remembered in history as Saint Vladimir in the Russian Orthodox Church. We will remember Vladimir Putin, but as a murderer, as an absolute, abject, terrifying murderer of women and children, not just soldiers, but old men and old ladies, grandfathers and grandmothers. He's being a murderer. He's not going to be a saint. But he's showered billions of dollars on the Russian Orthodox Church, and the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, he's been fluffing that guy for 20 years. He really thinks he's going to be a saint, and that's why he's doing this.
And how long do you see this lasting for?
Well, if we give Ukraine the weapons they deserve, not just America, mind you, but also any other Western nation that's involved in European defense. If we give them what they deserve, I think that Volodymyr Zelensky will be able to defend his nation and drive Russia away. The problem is, we don't know if Vladimir Putin is going to push a button. People need to understand that, Vladimir Putin may want to send nuclear weapons our way, but it takes 6 or 7 people pushing buttons to make that happen. It's not just one guy. But are all 7 of them crazy enough to do that? We don't know. And Vladimir Putin has been so embarrassed by his abject failure. I mean, a friend of mine said this the other day, a guy who's in the defense intelligence industry. He says, the longer you watch Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the more it reminds you of the last half hour of that crazy movie with Macaulay Culkin, Home Alone. Every time Vladimir Putin turns around, he gets hit in the head with another paint can. He's embarrassing himself. He's soiling his own bed. And the problem we have with that is at some point Vladimir Putin's going to understand that he looks like a clown. And when he understands that, we don't know what that clown's going to do.
Do you see a World War III coming?
I don't. The American people must not send troops to Ukraine.
I mean, we can't, Michael. We can't be the world police. We
No.
can't be. I mean, it's it's for them to figure out. I mean, as sad and devastating as it is, we don't want to send our men and women to.
I don't want to see our men and women. I don't want to see our men and women fighting in France. This is Europe's problem. I understand that. I think
Right.
Donald Trump was right. NATO is a paper tiger. We were paying all their bills, right?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, no men and women of American military forces should die in Ukraine, but we can do a lot more without risking American blood and too much American treasure. I agree with you. I don't think that this is our war. It is, in fact, the world's war already. Are we going to have World War III? We're already there. Yeah. Are there going to be nuclear weapons involved? I certainly hope not. But if we don't send American troops to Ukraine, I don't think that there will be.
And notice how Trump got us out of wars and never got us into any new wars. I mean, he totally went against the military-industrial complex, and Biden's playing right into their game right now.
Well, I mean, weakness is provocative. You can't be a doddering old fool in the president of the United States and think that Vladimir Putin is going to sit like and behave like he did with Donald Trump. He never did any of this under Donald Trump. And remember, this is not the first couple of months of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It's the 8th year of it. He first invaded Ukraine in 2014 when Barack was president.
Yeah.
So weakness is provocative, and as long as we have this, kind of doddering old fool in the White House, Vladimir Putin's going to run wild.
I called Joe Biden the basement dummy. I mean, look, it's a mess. I mean, you've really got a guy that is in strong mental decline, can't count to 4, can't form a complete sentence.
And he's controlled by the Easter Bunny. I mean...
And the Easter Bunny is one of his staffers was in the Easter Bunny outfit. That was confirmed. That's not even fake news. Like, outlets had to report that, and that's how far we've come, and that's how low we've gone as a nation. I mean, it's really crazy.
When Vladimir Putin saw the footage of Joe Biden scared by the Easter Bunny, being controlled by the Easter Bunny, being walked away like some old fool by the Easter Bunny, do you think he was in fear of the United States? I'm here to tell you, he wasn't.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. And you know what? There's a rumor that he'll be primaried in 2024 by, there's a few other Democrats that will probably run against him.
It's crazy if they don't, They'll lose everything. They're already on the verge of losing everything. We know they're going to lose the House. They may not lose the Senate because they're on the cusp of stealing it again. The way that they stole the 2020 elections, it's not the kind of theft that can be effective in House races, but it can be very effective in Senate races. I predict now that the Democrats are going to try to steal the Pennsylvania Senate race. I believe they'll try to steal others, but the one I'm watching is Pennsylvania.
And talk about that, because I know you're working on a project in regards to the upcoming elections and making sure that we have voter security and making sure that no fraud occurs. And you're really shining a light on that.
Well, I'm paying attention to Pennsylvania. It's the state I know the most about. I mean, we clearly had fraud in many other states. There are people that are focused on that on behalf of the Republican Party and on behalf of President Trump. Knowing as much as I do about Pennsylvania, I've done many campaigns there. I told the president I would go to work on Pennsylvania to try and correct it. In Pennsylvania in 2019, the Republican legislators, they controlled the House and the Senate of Pennsylvania, were concerned that they would lose their seats because Donald Trump was so unpopular because of a quirk in their election system where you could vote Democrat or Republican and everyone on that line would get your vote. If you didn't like the Republican president, you'd press Democrat and all the Republican legislators would lose. So they went to the governor and said, look, we want to get rid of this straight party voting. And the governor, a Democrat, said, why would I ever do that, right? But in fact, they made a deal where he wanted what they call no excuse mail-in balloting, meaning you could vote by mail for any reason under the sun, which was completely against the Pennsylvania Constitution, the first draft of which was written by old Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin knows a bit about democracy, right? So they decided, the Republicans, that they would give them no excuse mail-in balloting, which basically gave them unlimited mail-in ballots. And so the Democrats began working on their steal immediately. And then came COVID. Mind you, this Act 77, no excuse mail-in balloting, was passed even before COVID became an excuse for mail-in ballots. And we see, for example, that the electoral system, the database of Pennsylvania showed that X amount of voters had voted, but they had 200,000 more ballots than voters who had voted according to the system. 200,000 more ballots on all mail-in ballots. Well, we convinced a friend of mine who is a county commissioner in Pennsylvania named Doug McClinko to sue the state, to sue the Commonwealth and those involved in that ballot fraud, claiming that Act 77 was unconstitutional, and Doug won as the lead plaintiff. He won. So now, right now, no excuse mail-in balloting is illegal against the Constitution in Pennsylvania, but they're still moving forward. What people don't understand is that Zuckerberg and all that money he was floating around, wait till this Rigged movie it comes out. Oh my God, it's going to blow the lid off of things. David Bossie did a great job on that film. It's coming out now, coming out any day, I think. Zuckerberg spent $13 million in Pennsylvania alone, more than he spent anywhere else. Why? Because without Pennsylvania, no Republican can ever be president again. So we know that the Supreme Court is now looking at the case where the Commonwealth Court overturned no excuse mail-in balloting. The Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is deep, deep blue. We think they'll overrule the Constitution. Zuckerberg has people there in charge of elections. He's not just funding them this time. The new acting Secretary of State is one of his operatives from Washington. Lee Chapman is now the acting Secretary of State, and her deputy is from the Zuckerberg machine as well. Zuckerberg's machine is now in charge of Pennsylvania elections. My friend, let me tell you, Rory, they are aiming to steal the U.S. Senate seat in Pennsylvania because we're this close to taking over the Senate. We're going to take the House. It's not even really much of a question. But the Democrats, if they pull some of the same stuff they pulled in 2020, they can win. They can hold the Senate, maybe by a vote. Or I'm sorry, maybe by a seat, right? And I think the one they'll try to steal is Pennsylvania. And it's really something going on terribly wrong. I mean, I'm working right now with Dave Bossie trying to get a big screening of his movie up in Pennsylvania in the next couple of weeks. I think Bossie's movie is gonna move the needle for this nation and try to eliminate some of this ballot chicanery.
Yeah, and ballot harvesting is going on all over the place. I'm seeing videos, and how do we justify and how aren't people in jail for the stopping of counting of votes on election night? All these random ballots come out of the back of vans. I mean, you have people that were overseeing saying stop the count. I mean, it just goes on with election fraud, and a lot of these systems were twisting the vote. Somebody would select who they wanted to vote for, and then it would go to somebody else. I mean, there's a lot of different variables that factor into this.
You understand, it's really, there's a baseline. People need to understand that we live in Russia. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Do you think that what they did to my family and a dozen plus other families, what they did to Paul Manafort and Roger Stone, Carter Page, what they did to even Papadopoulos, all these other, what they did to destroy us is legal? It's not legal. Will Hillary Clinton go to jail for designing this? Because mind you, Hillary Clinton was managing it. She will not go to jail because we don't have a justice system in this country, right? Hunter Biden, his laptop completely ignored by the media because they knew it was real, but a bunch of 50 different fraudulent intelligence community experts said it was Russian disinformation. We now know it wasn't. We knew then it wasn't. But why isn't Hunter Biden going on trial? Because we don't have a justice system in this country. You understand, each and every one of these terrible things that are going on is because our justice system is broken. It's shattered into a million pieces. A million pieces. Why are none of these crimes that were committed during the elections of 2020 being prosecuted? We don't have a justice system. And the media is out there calling it the big lie. I mean, it's just a script. I know the script. You know the script. It was the same script that said Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian disinformation program. It's the same script that talked about Russian collusion. We don't have a justice system in this country. That's why they're getting away with it. That's why the rigged film is so important. That's why Doug McClintock's work in Pennsylvania with ballotsecuritynow.org is so important. If you don't shine a light on the cockroaches, they will never crawl away, because we live in Russia, my friend. We talk about Russia as a terrible place where elections are stolen and it's a cult of the personality with Vladimir Putin. I beg you to tell me how we're different, because we're not.
And Michael, it's a tragedy, and it's absolutely disgraceful what they put you, your family, and all your friends through with this fake Russia investigation. And for years, they led the public on and on saying, it's real, it's real, facts are coming out. And then in the end, it turns out to be completely fabricated, originated by Hillary Clinton and her campaign and her people, and there's nobody in jail, there's no accountability. Biggest double standard on earth. If that was a Republican that did that, they would be crucified and they would be in jail for the rest of their life. And, look at what they did to Nixon for doing something so minor compared to what a lot of these elected officials do today, and nothing happened. I mean, it's
you're
crazy.
Absolutely right. Roy, what happened to my family, my
and
wife.
Look at what they did to General Petraeus. I mean, I could go on and on about little tiny examples of people that just had their lives ruined. And you have other people like Hillary and Comey and Rosenstein and McCabe that are just out there walking free, getting media gigs and getting paid crazy.
Those three names you just read should all be in jail.
Yes.
In a real justice-driven democracy, they would be in jail.
Yes.
You know they would be. What they did to my family, they did to a dozen plus other families. My wife begs me not to do media now. I was a commentator on CNN during the 2016, 2017, 2018 timeframe. And every time I was on the TV, I got death threats. I've had 4 people arrested for it. We had a 35-year-old man who was harassing my 7-year-old daughter for 3 weeks, and they let him go. They let him go. The judge just let him go. I had a guy arrested for harassing my family 3 weeks ago. He doesn't even know where we live. I didn't tell you where I live. Nobody can find me. I'm in self-imposed, witness protection. I live in Florida, but you're not going to find me in Florida, right? And if you do, I don't go on the media anymore. Rory, yours is one of the first podcasts I've done. I'm doing it because I'm concerned about things in this country. My wife has begged me not to go back on CNN, Fox. But she says now, when we see what's going on with Ukraine, that she wants me to speak out. And I'm willing to do it. I'm glad to be on your show to do it. I enjoy your show. My friend Kirk Bell, who's been a guest on your show, is a big fan. Really advised me to do it. I appreciate you letting me be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift topics just a little bit. You were part of Operation Warp Speed. You got the vaccines out there. You and Trump really, helped speed up the process. Pharmaceuticals and other companies were saying it would take years, but the way you guys did it, it was the real deal. Explain that to the audience. I know that's a big accomplishment for you guys.
It was, I was along for the ride. I was a senior staffer as an assistant secretary. I was, I think probably like badge number 4 at Operation Warp Speed, but it was all Donald Trump. It was what we called an urgency process. We knew if we just let the vaccines and the treatments, by the way, it was a big part of Operation Warp Speed, the treatments.
Yes.
And Donald Trump wanted us to focus as much on treatments as we did vaccines. They wanted to just put them through the regular bureaucratic process, and that we would still not have a vaccine in this country. We certainly wouldn't have any treatments if we were just waiting on the regular process. Donald Trump took it outside of the bureaucratic process and put it in Operation Warp Speed, a brilliant move on his part. And then he staffed it with military, not bureaucrats, with military. And then he put a brilliant scientist from outside the government in charge, not a bureaucrat. And time and time again, I was fortunate to be there at the founding. I actually chose the name Operation Warp Speed. And it was a really, I'm proud of all of that. I mean, and as you know, unfortunately, I got taken out by throat cancer in late September of 2020 before the election. And I was practically my deathbed by the time the election came around. And I was damn near dying by the time the turn of the presidency came. But I was first in line to get a vaccine because I was immune compromised. I didn't know I was immune compromised at that time, but I had cancer. So they wanted me to get the vaccine. I was one of the first ones. I got the first shot, the second shot, and waited 6 months for the booster. I was one of the first ones in Florida to get a booster. And I transferred after getting better, no more cancer. I transferred my care down from New York to a great cancer hospital in Florida. And I went to get my first appointment there. They had me go through blood panels, scans in the MRI machine. That was awful. And I sat there with my doctor. She said, well, your iron is this, and your thyroid is that, and your vitamin D is this. And she said, and you have 0 COVID antibodies. I looked at her. She said, well, you clearly haven't been vaccinated. I said, I've been vaccinated 3 times. I'm a founder of Operation Warp Speed. What do you mean I have no COVID antibodies? She said, well, clearly the treatments, chemotherapy and radiation. I had 35 radiation treatments on my throat. I'm lucky I even have a voice. And she said that it destroyed my immune system. I'm unable to build immunities through a vaccination process. She said, well, you're clearly going to get COVID. And when you do, you're going to get very sick because you're immune compromised now. We know that. So you got to go to the hospital immediately. Look, I came down to Florida because Ron DeSantis is the governor. I sat in on a lot of those governor calls, probably 2/3 of them, with president on, with the secretary on, with the vice president on, listened to all the governors. The only governor out of 50 of them that I heard who knew half of what he was doing was Ron DeSantis. So one of the reasons we came down here, besides to be safe from Antifa and out of harm's way from all the crazy leftist violence, is because Ron DeSantis knows how to deal with COVID. He knows how to deal with a pandemic. And when I told DeSantis's people that I had 0 COVID antibodies and that I was going to get very sick, DeSantis's one of his staff members from the Surgeon General's office, a great Surgeon General down here named Ladapo, an incredible man. They said the FDA just gave an emergency use authorization to a monoclonal antibody called Evusheld. They're only giving it to immune-compromised people because it is a prophylactic for immune-compromised people. A monoclonal antibody is a treatment, but this one it actually keeps you from getting COVID, right? So I went and got in line, and I got it. And 2 weeks later, my entire family got COVID. I didn't. I'm fine. I'm living with COVID it's not a pandemic. I guess it's more of an endemic now. We're going to have spikes over the summer. But we all have to learn how to live with this, like we live with influenza. It's not going to go away. In our family, we live by some rules here. My kids don't mask at school, but I wear a mask in Mass because there are 1,000 people in our cathedral from Mass. And I'm immune compromised. I don't care if anybody else around me wears a mask. I wear a mask on a plane. I go to a restaurant. I go to class because I'm in a theology program now. I don't wear a mask. I don't wear a mask to the shopping, for grocery shopping. But we live carefully. And the one thing we do, Roy, that most people don't do, and it's a shame, is I spend a lot of time in the sun. I'm from Buffalo. So we had 2 seasons in Buffalo, winter and July 12th. Very true. But, people who live up in that area don't have the advantage we do in Florida. When you get sun, your body makes vitamin D. You can take vitamin D supplements, and I supplement very heavily, but vitamin D supplements aren't anywhere near as, 15, 20 minutes on your bare chest or your bare back I go out in the sun every single day because, what is it? Genesis 1:3, God created the light and it was good. Dude, it's good and it's good for you. We know this from Operation Warp Speed and from the COVID task force.
Yeah.
Those people who have low levels of D, insufficient D in their system, are more likely to get COVID. And if you get COVID, you're more likely to get really sick. If you have high levels of D, sufficient levels of D, you're less likely to get COVID, and you're very likely to have a good outcome if you do get COVID. And I knew that was true, Rory. I knew there was a key to this when I saw some of the scientists out of the bureaucracy, who, whenever somebody talked about vitamin D, they would roll their eyes like, oh, another vitamin D guy, right? Vitamin D is important. It's, from my perspective, if we're going to live with this endemic virus, and by the way, there are going to be more, and they're probably going to come from labs, most likely in China. There are going to be more. This is only the first one. There will probably be bioweapons out of Russia. Who knows? There are going to be more. We need to learn how to live with virus, live in what we call an endemic, not a pandemic. Remember, with COVID, not a lot of people die. It's a very small percent, and children barely even get sick. My kids had it for a couple days, right?
Yeah.
I was careful to stay away from them. I was careful to get in the sun every single day. Vitamin D is so important to living with this virus. And if you get out in the sun this summer, we're going to have a spike. Right now, we're headed toward a spike. And most of the scientists I trust, Dr. Bob Redfield, who Donald Trump appointed to head up the CDC, he's a brilliant man. He expects a spike right now. I talk to these scientists still today. During this summer spike, get out in the sun. Eat right. Lose weight. Let me tell you something, Roy. My cancer, you probably don't recognize me from my photos. I lost over 100 pounds.
Wow.
I'm not gaining it back, my friend. I don't have to be fat. One way to stay away from COVID is don't be fat, right?
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, live better, eat better, get out in the sun, and we'll all be fine.
Yeah,
So,
believe it or not.
by the way, if you want to get a vaccine, I wanted a vaccine. I got a vaccine. If you and your doctor agree you need to get a vaccine, go get one. I'm not saying don't get a vaccine, that vitamin D is some kind of a vaccine, but a part of your own personal care regimen needs to be getting out in the sun. Because if you don't, you're more likely to get it.
It's absolutely true. And I live in Palm Springs, California, so it's very sunny here. I work out every day. I stay on a healthy schedule, a good diet plan. But, a few years ago, I used to be almost 100 pounds overweight. So, I definitely changed my whole way of life. And,
How'd you lose the weight?
I quit drinking and I stopped eating all the fast food junk and all that nonsense that I was putting into my body that didn't belong there. So
I don't recommend my diet. I was on a liquid diet for 5 months. I lost 100 pounds in 5 months. And by the end, at the end, I don't think you probably went through this. You probably did it in a very smart way. I don't recommend the cancer diet, but I went through what they call radical muscular atrophy. Muscular atrophy can cause you to hallucinate. And let me tell you something, 400 plus Grateful Dead shows, I know from hallucinations, right?
Yeah.
These were not the fun kind. These were like, really more than anything else, I saw birds everywhere, out of the corner of my eye, in the bathroom, while I'm doing my business, there's a bird, but sometimes they were dragons. It was the most horrific experience of my life. For about 3 weeks, I was hallucinating.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend the diet, but I don't have to be fat. I'm going to stay skinny. I went through that kind of a weight loss. It was horrible. I earned it. I'm staying skinny.
Right. Yeah. And Michael, and I'll tell you, I know exactly what you're talking about because I would fast a lot and I would also eat like one meal a day. So there would be times where I'd start hallucinating. I'd get weak in the body because, I was running a lot and I was eating one meal a day. And I was just very, very dedicated to fitness and getting back into shape. And I'm, nowadays it's impossible to gain weight for me. And people always tell me, oh, you poor thing, you have it so hard. You can't gain weight. Because obviously a lot of people are trying to lose weight and it's hard for a lot of people. But, I like to stay disciplined though. So it's nice.
It is, my thing is I was on a liquid diet for 5 months. which was awful because I couldn't swallow. When you get radiation as much as I did, I mean, across 50 days, every weekday, a session of radiation, it's the intersection of your breath, your swallow, your ingestion of food. It's the intersection of your entire life. It's right here, right? And then they shut it down. Right. I mean, I had about this much. I had like the width of a pencil open in my throat, and for about 3 weeks, I was getting. I would fall asleep, and I couldn't lay down because the mucus would come into that little hole in my throat. I would fall asleep, for a minute. I eventually fall asleep. I would be asleep for 9 minutes, and then I'd wake up, drowning in my own spit. And I had a machine that they gave me to suck it out of my throat. And then I would calm down because when you wake up like that, your heart goes a million miles a minute. And then eventually you cool off, you slow down, you fall asleep. And then 9 minutes later, you're drowning in your own spit. That went on for 3 weeks. So you can imagine how, at one point I just wanted to die. But
you told me doctors said you weren't going to make it. And you overcame the odds. You overcame.
I think at one point I just decided to die. It was a bad move, but I was, in the midst of terrible treatment. Sometimes the treatments are worse than the disease, right? But I'm cancer-free now, so it was all worth it. But I stopped eating, I stopped drinking, and it was right before Thanksgiving of 2020. And my wife put me in the cancer center in the hospital. Basically, they they fed me through through tubes, and they saved my life. I mean, honestly, I had a little meeting with God in that hospital room. I was asleep for like 20 hours because I hadn't slept right for weeks, because of that drowning, wake up, sleeping cycle that I went through. It'll drive you nuts, right? And I just wanted to die. And I had this dream, dude. It was crazy. I fell asleep. I was asleep for most of the day. On Thanksgiving Day, I had this dream where me and all my daughters, I have 3 daughters, and my wife were sitting on a picnic blanket in like the Sound of Music meadow, it was beautiful green. And I heard music in the background. And we're sitting there laughing, not talking. There was an unopened picnic basket on the blanket. And we're just laughing. And then the sun came down onto the blanket, right? And just sat there. And my littlest daughter, Leah, she's our troublemaker. She reached out and she poked the sun. And the sun went woo like that and expanded. And everybody disappeared but me and the sun. And I looked at it. I remember not being afraid, but worried. I remember being worried that maybe Leah had burned her finger. But that was the only thing I was afraid of. And then the sun, it spoke to me and it said, "Get up, get dressed."
Right.
And I just looked, like, what do you mean? And the music got louder. Yeah. And it said, "Get up." It wasn't like, "Get up, it was just like, "Get up, get dressed." It's about 4 or 5 times that happened. And the music is playing. And then I woke up and I was standing next to my bed. I had been in bed for 20 hours. I was standing next to my bed. I walked over with the machine, wheeled it with me, over to the chair. It was 5 a.m. It was too early to call my wife. And I sat in the chair and I watched the sun come up. And I knew dying was not the answer. Somehow it just happened, And now I've got a lot of questions like, why didn't they put me in prison? I had a good lawyer, cost a lot of money, but why didn't they succeed, right? I mean, I was the only person in the Trump retinue who knew Trump and Putin. Why didn't they get me? I have no idea. Yeah. Why didn't I die from cancer? I have a lot of questions. That's why I'm in this master's program for theology now, because, you get your answers from your faith, I guess. I'm not really preachy about it, but, right. When I go to class, I get answers. And, in the end, I think we all need answers to really simple questions. My question was, what's next? And I honestly don't know. I don't know what's next for me. Right. I don't know what's next for this country. I know one thing for sure, my friend. Yeah. It ain't cancer.
Well, I'm glad you beat it. I love your spirit. You know, you have determination like no other, and you're just, you know, you're a warrior, man. You're as tough as nails. I wanna shift topics a little bit. You mentioned that they came after your family. You had death threats. You had Antifa. You had, you know, different radical leftist groups. You know, all that stuff. But explain that to the audience, because a lot of people have gone through that, and it's really terrifying. The doxing is really becoming a new trend in our society, and it's the most intrusive sort of invading boundaries that you could ever even think of.
Well, I come from the public relations world, and I spent a lot of time promoting candidates, companies, products, you know, litigation, things like that. And so my addresses and phone numbers are out there. I published probably over 1,000 press releases on behalf of clients, and on there was my cell phone. And PR, you don't change your phone because the reporters won't call you, right? And so when all this went down with Russia, the Russia Gate stuff, everybody had my number. So they started threatening me. Everybody knew my address. So they started threatening me. I remember, my friend, I'll tell you something, but most people don't know. January 20th, my wife and I were dancing at the inaugural ball 2017, just a few feet away from Donald Trump and the First Lady. You know, a Ukrainian citizen still at the time. We've been together for many years. It must have felt surreal for her to be dancing next to the President of the United States. And 1 month later, on February 20th, 2017, my wife got her citizenship. It was probably the happiest day of my life to actually, that ceremony, the citizenship ceremony, is really inspiring. And to see your own wife go through it, and she had a little flag, and she was so happy. I remember that day. It was a great day. And then March 20th, I'm overseas on business, and Jackie Spear, a Democrat congresswoman from California, was speaking live on television at a House Intelligence hearing with James Comey, the FBI director. And she started talking about me like I was a spy. And she started talking about my wife like she was a spy. This is the first time we ever heard all this crap about Russian collusion. She alleged basically that I was somehow Putin's image maker, she called me. Ridiculous. If she knew anything about Russia at all, she would know I worked for the previous president, and they didn't get along all that well. In fact, Putin basically kicked Boris Yeltsin out of the presidential seat, right? But somehow my name came up, and she asked Comey, what do you think of Michael Caputo? And I think she said, and his wife. And James Comey, instead of saying, of course there's nothing to this, he said, I can't answer anything about American persons. And our life went like into the toilet that day. The harassment started that day. I was overseas, and I got a telephone call from a guy, 3 calls, and the third one he said, I know you're away on business and your children are home alone with your wife. We're going to burn your house down with them inside. That was the first day of harassment, and it never, ever changed. It hasn't changed today. I mean, although they don't know where I am and they don't know my phone number. I had a guy arrested just a couple of weeks ago. He was emailing me every day for 9 months talking about my death. And then when it turned to my father's death, and I found out that he lived just about 3 miles from my father, I had to have him arrested. You know, people on Twitter. Twitter's a cesspool, as you know. But there are people on Twitter. There's a woman on Twitter, crazy as a loon, who said that my daughters should be raped by Jeffrey Epstein. She said it 3 times. By the way, Twitter won't delete those tweets. My daughters, who at the time were 6 and 8, I guess.
What? And then that's that's the double standard too. I mean, it's like the far left can say certain things and they won't get punished on social media.
They don't get thrown.
If
judges won't do anything.
Yeah,
the judges in my hometown won't do anything. My former hometown, I left because I'll tell you what, you do that stuff in Florida, in Ron DeSantis' Florida, you go to jail. You go to jail in this state. You know, I was afraid somebody was going to break in my house at night. I carried a gun everywhere I went in New York. I had a concealed carry permit. But you shoot somebody who's coming after you in your own home, you go to jail. Somebody comes after me in my house here in Florida, now, I'm not the one that's going to go to jail, and they ain't going to make it home, right? Because in Florida, they understand the right, with the castle doctrine. In New York, the homeowner goes to jail. So I got to tell you, this is something that Carter Page goes through, that J.D. Gordon goes through, Paul Manafort, God bless him, goes through. Roger Stone gets so much of it because he refuses to quiet down. I understand that. Roger Stone is, unintimidatable. He goes through it. He gets braced on the street constantly. All of us go through it. It's never going to stop until, listen, I don't know why our country is this way. They try to blame Donald Trump. Donald Trump's not the reason this is happening. The problem is that the most disordered people in our country are now front and center, especially on the left. You see it all the time. And there's really nothing we can do about it. If we try to fight it off, we're violent, right? Let me tell you something. Mark my words, my friend. When we take over the House, and if we're able to keep them from cheating on the Senate, because like I said, cheating on House races is more difficult than cheating on the Senate races. If you understand, for example, Pennsylvania, they manipulated the state results of Pennsylvania by stealing it in Philadelphia, where they've been stuffing ballot boxes for generations, right? Stealing it in Pennsylvania offsets all the vote in the entire state, right? So then the state goes blue, just like it did unusually with 200,000 mysterious votes in the 2020 election. They can do that for a senator as well, because it's a statewide election. So, when that happens, if we're able to take the House and we're able to protect ourselves and take the Senate, the violence it's going to happen again. You think the summer of 2020 was bloody? Wait till the late fall, early winter of 2022. It's going to get much worse, because these same people, the most disordered people in the country, who were able to go out and burn down police precincts and light courtrooms on fire and take over entire, neighborhoods, in major cities. These same people, they haven't been allowed to do anything lately. They're going to be let loose again. It's going to be much worse. They had so much pent-up anger because they're disordered people. What happens in November is going to make November 22 is going to make the summer of 2020 look like a walk in the park, my friend.
No, I hear you. And I want to mention, kind of shift topics a little bit. Working with Trump on a daily basis and knowing him as long as you have, going back to the 80s and working with him, what's it like? I mean, he seems like just an amazing person to be around, just a blast, and just a fun all around guy, and just a real comedian. I mean, just very straight to the point, very direct, very from the heart, as genuine, authentic as they come. I can tell. I mean, they're the unfiltered things. I enjoy, but I can see how some people get rubbed the wrong way sometimes. But it's better to be real than be fake, in my opinion. So I appreciate that.
Here's the thing, and I think you captured him pretty well. Your interpretation of him is spot on. Donald Trump is not the cartoon that the left is painted of. Right. They call him a failure. The guy's an immense success in business. He's been
playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. I mean, in a business sense, in a strategy sense.
It's not. Is he playing 3D chess? Probably not. Is he playing 2D chess? Most definitely. And buddy, you want to play checkers with him, he will bowl you right over. Donald Trump is a force of nature. He's also kind. He's so nice to my daughters. He's a real blessing to be around. I can't buy a meal at Mar-a-Lago. Every time he sees me, he buys me dinner. And it's not like he's, he counts his pennies. Let me tell you something. That's why he was so great as president of the United States in many ways. He husbands his resources. He guards the American taxpayers' money like it's his own. But you don't mess with Donald Trump either. You don't steal from Donald Trump, by the way. I've watched him deal with construction outfits, vendors that were involved in, some of his buildings or some of his hotels, putting in tile, ripping them off. And he never forgets it. He's got the memory of an elephant. And, the last person, Donald Trump's decision making, people say, that he's not, his personnel decisions were wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump is a trusting person. People find that a fault, a flaw. I don't. I mean, Donald Trump wants to believe in the good things about America, the good things about people. And the last, he takes his own counsel on decisions. And it might not be conservative. It might not be Republican. It might not be what Mitch McConnell wants him to do. But Donald Trump does what he thinks is right. I really like the man a lot. I always have. I mean, I remember meeting him. I think I was 26. I picked him up at the airport in one of Black Manafort and Stone's cars. I think it was then. Anyway, he was just so nice to me, like I was one of his friends. You get on an elevator with him in Trump Tower. He knew the name of the Latino elevator operator. You get on that same elevator with that guy when the president wasn't on, or that time, Donald Trump, the CEO, wasn't on. That guy couldn't do anything but talk about how great of a person he was. People who know Donald Trump outside of this horrible environment, they love him unless they lose to him. When they lose to him, they make up stories like his niece, like his biographer, all these people who he decided weren't worth his time. They tell false stories about him. He's not the cartoon that people make him out to be. He's a kind soul. He's good to people. And in the end, he loves America. Is he going to run for re-election? He tells me, like he tells everybody else, Michael, you're going to be happy. I worry about him because they've tried everything to stop him, except one thing. What the terrible, most disordered, most ridiculous deep state people will do to stop a president of the United States, the violence they'll take on him alone. I don't want that for him. I know the Secret Service who are around him. By the way, the Secret Service who are around him, they love him. They protect him like their own brother, right? But I worry for his safety in 2024. If he runs, I'm absolutely behind him 100%. But I wish he would stay. He would take time to be happy. People have been so bad to him. He deserves to be happy. And if running for election again makes him happy, God bless him.
And isn't it fascinating how all these celebrities and all these athletes and all these people used to admire him, worship him, put him in movies and their songs, and then the election comes around in 2016 and everybody turns on him. It just goes to show how much power and influence the media truly has with brainwashing and really, being good at a certain narrative. I mean, if they want to turn somebody into a villain, they'll do it. And
I got a great story. I was in his office in, I guess, 2013 in Trump Tower, and he and I, we just talked. I'm not intimidated by people in power. Donald Trump's a little bit more intimidating than your average guy, but we were very frank with each other.
Intimidating in the sense that he's just straight to the point, no bullshit, like in a good way.
He's also larger than life, man. I mean, you're in front of a guy who's larger than life. It makes you feel small. It just does, right? But we were pretty frank with each other. I think he liked the fact that I was frank with him. And I'm sitting in his office talking to him. And then he looks up from his desk like this, and he says, "Hey, Neil." And I turn around, and it's Neil Young. Neil freaking Young, who I love his music. And I turned around, and the president, Mr. Trump then, said, "Neil, Mike, Neil." And I said, hamina. I couldn't even speak to Neil Young, right? And Neil was there, and he's like, he's laughing. And Donald Trump said, "He sits here and tells me all the crap he wants to tell me, and he can't even say a word to you. What's that about, right?" So I'm sitting there, and Neil Young sat there and asked him, I think it was for $3 million. He asked Donald Trump, the businessman, for a $3 million investment on this terrible streaming service he had called Pono or something like that. And Trump, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. He doesn't say no to you. He'll, his accountants will say no to you, right? So Young comes in, asks the guy for a couple $1 million. They're pals. Donald Trump went to his concert that night, I guess, and was backstage, right? And then when he runs for president, what does Neil Young do? Calls him out, calls him all kinds of names. I'm here to tell you, Donald Trump is fine to ask him for millions of dollars.
Right.
Neil Young is, listen, if you look at polling, Rory, you'll find that about 1.7% of Americans will say that a celebrity or a sports figure helped them make up their minds on public policy issues. They have zero influence. They do, but they can't help themselves, right? But what's also funny is that Donald Trump, he's not mean to Neil Young now. I mean, I'm a founder of this new Spanish language conservative TV and radio network called Americano Media, and we had one of our hosts interviewed the president last week, right? And she asked him about, I think the guy's name is David Ortiz, who is just drummed into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Of course, right? Boston Red Sox, yeah, Big Papi, yeah.
Big Papi. And she said, hey, he's a Puerto Rican guy. We're a Hispanic network. She said, what do you think about Big Papi being brought into the Baseball Hall of Fame? And Donald Trump said, he's a great player. He deserves it. It's great for the people of Puerto Rico. Another great legacy being honored. He's a great player. God bless him. Congratulations. Do you remember what Big Papi did, my friend, when he was invited to the White House? He turned it down. He said he would never be around Donald Trump, ever, right? He tweeted out a picture of him with Obama on the day he was supposed to be with Trump and the rest of his team, right? Donald Trump doesn't care about that. He wished him well. He wishes Neil Young well, but these little pricks can't get over themselves.
And that's another thing I really respect and adore and admire about Trump is that even if you have had a confrontation with him in the past or anybody has, he's willing to resolve it. He's willing to say water under the bridge. I'm not going to hold a grudge against you. He lives his life, by the motto, life's short. I strongly believe that he is that easygoing. And, it's these stories are lovely to hear. And it really sounds like he does have a heart of gold. And if you are his friend, he will do whatever he can to help. I mean, I believe he is the type that is the loyalty to the max. Will give the shirt off of his back to somebody that he cares about.
When he heard I had cancer, he called me up, and he's like, "Are you going to be all right?" I said, "I don't know. They think it might have gone to my brain. I'm not sure." And maybe I shouldn't talk about this, but he got really upset on the phone, and he said, "Michael, look what they did to you. Look what they did to you." He said, "Look what they did to you. The Russian investigations, all of this, they've driven you to cancer. Look what they've done to you. You need to live through this." He was upset. I've never heard him like that. I've never seen him like that. And I think people don't understand that the man is as human as the rest of us. Yeah. And when I got past my cancer, I got my no evidence of disease diagnosis. He was really kind and very pleased. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago. I had my birthday party at Mar-a-Lago, and he was very. It was fun. It was fun. Mar-a-Lago is a great place, man. It's way above my pay grade, but when I went there, another great story. I was getting ready to go to Mar-a-Lago to celebrate my diagnosis in April of 2021. And somebody from Mar-a-Lago called me and said, are you able to eat regular things? I said, well, I have problems, swallowing. I still do. But back then, I was still drinking those awful boost shakes. For 5 months, I've drank them, right? But I can eat some things. And they said, what do you eat? I said, well, I really can't taste anything. They blasted my mouth with this radiation. What can you eat and what can you taste? I said, well, funny, but I can taste oysters, I never lost that. I could always taste oysters, and they slide right down my throat, so I can actually eat them, taste them, and eat them. But and the woman on the phone, okay, well, Mr. Caputo, we look forward to seeing you. We show up for dinner, and there were 7 oyster stations, 7 different oyster stations. I didn't ask him. I'm pretty sure he made sure I had as many oysters as I could eat.
That's just the kind of guy he is. He wants to make sure.
It just anybody who knows him well or knows him, just a little bit, as long as they're kind to him, he's more than kind to you.
And when you saw him, did you say you saw him a couple weeks ago as well at Mar-a-Lago, or how was that?
He looks good. He looks good. He's lost some weight, got a lot of energy, and I tell you, when he did his interview with our TV network, Americano Media,
Yeah.
Any of your Spanish language viewers want to hear some good conservative radio and television, it's on Sirius XM on channel 153, I think it is.
Yeah.
He sounded like he might be running. He told our host, he said, like he says, I think you're going to be happy. I think you're going to be happy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So let me ask you this. There is that, debate going around whether it will be DeSantis or Trump. But, my theory on this is DeSantis will finish his term as governor and Trump will, close out the 4 years and, have that, full, 8 years of presidency to finish what he started. I believe he needs to get the job done, and I believe that his legacy is still lots of unfinished business.
I agree. I'm a big supporter of DeSantis as well. I don't want him to leave as governor. He's got a lot to do in Florida. I think he likes his job. He's so good at it. I mean, what he's done with Disney has been amazing. And what he's done with COVID, people call him Death Santis. It's outrageous. He saved so many lives. Let me tell you something. The reason I'm okay is Ron DeSantis, right? I know that. My family and I know that the way that we're living with this endemic, we could never do in another state. It couldn't happen. Our kids are happy in school without masks. We're living a normal life, and it's because of Ron DeSantis. I never asked him, but I can't believe, from what I know of Ron DeSantis and his staff, that he would run against Donald Trump. I would never believe it. But if Donald Trump doesn't run, you look at the tea leaves on this, he's a young man, DeSantis. He could wait. But if somebody else runs and wins, and, this whole Biden administration makes it almost a fait accompli that a Republican will win the presidency, some of the comedians who are talking about running on the Democrat side, holy gosh, I don't know that DeSantis would be able to avoid,
The only other person that the person I would trust and the person that I think is the most accurate and consistent at this point in DC would be like a Josh Hawley. I mean, he's always stood up for us, for America First, for big tech. He's always been on the president's side. I believe he would be one of the guys. But I really think Trump will finish what he started. I really do.
I think you're probably right. I think, but I'll tell you this. I tried to run him for governor, and boy, he liked playing that along. People would be like, "Oh, you got to run?" He's like, "Yeah, maybe not. I don't know." He loves making people wait. He loves the kind of anticipation game, and so I don't think we're going to know until well after the midterms. But I think he wants to. Here's the thing that I know about Donald Trump from his days in the private sector: you don't steal from Donald Trump.
Right.
You just don't. And I think that, I don't want to make that sound like a small thing. Befouling the U.S. election system is I think, a venal sin. The people who did it are going to hell. They're going to burn in hell. I don't even think they have the option of confession. I think these people are going to hell for eternity. But in Donald Trump's case, you just don't steal from him. He will take it back from you. That is the way he is. That is the way he's been all of his life. You steal from Donald Trump, it's a temporary thing. So looking at Donald Trump, from the last 30 years to Donald Trump today, I'd have to say he's running, because you just don't steal from the man.
Yeah, and we look at all the people that have stolen from him and people that have done him dirty, and he's not one of those people that just goes off and pretend nothing ever happened. I mean, he's out for payback. He definitely wants to win this thing. He wants to fix the system. He wants to expose all these rats, and I believe he'll succeed. I really do. And I'm curious. What about his running mate? Who do you imagine that would be?
I don't know.
And I hope to God that he doesn't pick another Mike Pence establishment clown, because we need outsider. Nobody that's been involved with the DC swamp, because we all know where that leads to. It leads to bad, expert advice from his, advisors. It leads to mixed communication errors. It leads to, just things that we don't want happening.
I do like Tim Scott.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's been polluted by. I don't think he's drank any swamp water, as they say. I like Tim Scott. I know the president likes Tim Scott. He has lots of good things to say about him. I think Tim Scott is of the caliber as well. I think if you look at, I've worked on many different presidential campaigns. You have to look at the calculus of states. Tim Scott's, from a solid Southern state. It's something he brings to the table. Donald Trump, he could run with anybody from any Southern governor. I think an African-American conservative man is good. I think it's a strong showing. I would put my money on Tim Scott. And I think Tim Scott would do it, But I think a governor, I don't know what governor. There's only one governor I like. And I don't want him to take him from me.
Let me ask you this. I've been floating this idea around, and I've been talking about it on my show, and I think it really carries a lot of merit, and I think it really could do a lot of good. What about Elon Musk? I mean, look at all of the amazing things that he's doing for humanity. Look at how he's standing up for the most important, thing facing our society right now, which is free speech. I mean, him and Donald Trump are on the same page in a lot of ways. They have become, more of friends as of lately. I believe they are in contact, most likely. I don't know if they're in contact about him being his running mate, but, just about ideas in general. That's what I've heard. They have talked just, on a business level and other things. But what do you think? I mean, just with where technology's headed, with how evolved we are as a society, and I just think Elon Musk has a fan base that is both sides of the political spectrum as well. So I believe that would bring many kinds of different voters to the table, and they would see, wow, Elon Musk pairing with Donald Trump. The people that hate Donald Trump, they're going to be like, maybe Donald Trump isn't so bad after all.
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, people said the same thing about Tulsi Gabbard, right? Like Tulsi would really shake things up. She'd bring people from both sides of the aisle.
Right.
I don't know if the Republican Party would go for that, but Elon Musk, I like the guy. I met him. I first met him backstage at a rat dog show. And basically accost Elon Musk. He wasn't, a recognizable figure then, but this woman came up and just started jabbering his ear off. She was clearly high as a kite, right? And Musk was just sitting there, nice as could be. And it wasn't like he was trying to scoop her up or anything. He was just nice. He seems like a really, really nice person. And from my perspective, more authentic people in Washington, you can't go wrong with that. At the same time, frankly, if you're talking, your recipe, somebody outside the swamp, outside the pollution of Washington, Musk certainly meets that kind of recipe. And if you're wondering if Donald Trump is talking to somebody who's interesting, my answer to you is, if they're interesting, Donald Trump is talking to them.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
And I've heard him say very positive things about him. I think it's very possible. I mean, look, would Donald Trump do something outside the box for his vice presidency after Mike Pence? You're damn right he would.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing. In regards to Donald Trump, I strongly believe that, he will get these people back that did him wrong. The first time around he learned, what he needed to learn, and now he knows the game better than ever. And I think there's a lot that's going to occur that's going to maybe surprise some people.
Well, look, let me tell you something. You look at Joe Biden and his age. he is incapable of the presidency. Donald Trump he's got, I don't know, it's strange. It's like he's gotten younger since he left the presidency. He's got more energy. Let me tell you something. You try and walk across an airport tarmac with that guy, you can't keep up with him. Right. And he looks good. He's lost some weight. He's the same guy. Hasn't lost a step. In fact, I think because he's able to rest and relax a little bit, and he has been for a year. I think he's even more tanned, rested, and ready, as they say. You can't compare him to Joe Biden or people of his age. Donald Trump. Look, I don't want to say anything weird, but there's just some. It's like, I don't want to say superhuman, but there's something about Donald Trump that makes him singularly unique. He comes with more energy, more power, more focus than your average human being, and they just can't take him down.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And last thing before I let you go, I know you got to go here shortly. But I love this interview. I could talk to you all day. You're a fascinating guy. You lived one hell of a life. And, knowing President Trump as long as you have and, being by his side on a daily basis with, just business operations and campaign operations is just fascinating. But I really love how he opened the door for all these outsider candidates. Before the norm was go to Harvard, go to Yale, and then become a career-long politician. Now, on both sides of the aisle, Donald Trump really opened that door for people to run, and I think that's a blessing in disguise that I don't think the left has really acknowledged enough.
Well, I think it's true internationally, too. I can tell you without Donald Trump, there would be no Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine. And without Volodymyr Zelensky, there would be no Ukraine today.
Right.
They elected him a lot. I mean, tell you, I was there at the time. And, of course, I'm hearing about it from my wife during the whole time frame, right? People were talking about Zelensky as a possible candidate and someone who could run the country because they said, well, look at Donald Trump in America. He brought all kinds of great people to the fore in the States and far, far away. He changed not just American politics, but global politics. And if he chooses to run, he'll do more of it. I think that's why they're so damn afraid of him. Because they know they haven't seen the half of it. Right. But if he doesn't choose to run, he still has made such fundamental changes in the world that he will go down in history.
Absolutely. Michael Caputo, I love having you with us. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can connect with you, and the projects that you have coming up.
Sure. I'm on Twitter. I'm unfortunately a Twitter addict. It sure beats heroin, but it's harder to get off than heroin.
Nice.
Michael R. Caputo, at Michael R. Caputo on Twitter. I'm working now with Americano Media, americanomedia.com, for Spanish language conservative radio and television networks. It's the only one. And we expect to have a pretty profound impact on the 22 and 24 elections. That's at americanomedia.com. And also there's an app on your smartphone. For anyone Spanish language, it's really strong. 18 hours a day of original programming that's scaring the living daylights out of the left. Also, I'm working on ballot security now in Pennsylvania. Keep your eye on Pennsylvania. You better watch the Senate races because what they did in 2020, they're going to try in 2022 because they have to maintain the control of the Senate. They already know they're going to lose the House, but they have not given up on the Senate. And in order to do it, they're going to steal it. So those are my projects. I'm working hard on them. And listen, I'll tell you, after everything that we've all been through, Carter and me and Paul Manafort, Roger Stone, I'm living a pretty good life now. I'm with my daughters and my wife, safe and sound in Ron DeSantis's Florida. And I'll tell you what, life is pretty good.
Will you guys all get the justice you deserve? You, Carter Page, Papadopoulos, will that day ever come, do you think? All you guys?
No. We don't
I'm sure you've attempted several lawsuits and they don't really go anywhere.
No, I'm watching Carter more than anything else, and Carter, who really deserves remuneration what they did to him. What they did to me, they just stayed just a little far enough back from liability. And what they did to Paul, Paul, I mean, I just saw him last week. I introduced him at a speech in Naples, Florida. He's so zen. It's amazing. 3 years in prison, 1 year in solitary, and he's okay. And he got there, by the way, when he was in solitary, he told me they wouldn't give him anything to read. They gave him one book. That was the Bible. I told him, I said, my class this semester is the New Testament. And Paul said, oh, wait till you get to the book of James. And I thought, I just heard that from Paul. I would never have expected him to talk to me about the Bible when I knew him. He was a master of the universe in Washington. The most, he was the biggest, the best political consultant in the world, and now he's just Zen, Roger Stone still being abused by the justice system. They got him in a civil tax, IRS suit just so they can harass him. Still dragging him through the crap on the January 6th stuff. Are we going to get justice? No, I don't think so. I don't think there is any justice left in this country. The only way any of us will see justice in this country is if we elect a Republican president who's got the balls to clean out the Department of Justice, to clean out the FBI, to clean out the CIA, to clean out the DIA. And there's only one president I know that would do that.
And no, you're right. You're right. And Michael, why do I have a feeling that it's about to get way more vicious? And this is going to be a repeat, and they're going to come after you guys again when Trump announces he's running for re-election. I believe this is just it's going to be a continuance. They're not going to stop. They're going to continue to harass, and I believe they're going to get even more hostile and radical than they were before.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's why my wife is telling me that she wants me to stay out. My daughters want me to stay out. I almost died, and they almost threw me in jail before I nearly died. During the time I had cancer, I was quarantined against my family. I had to live in a part of the house where they couldn't come. And my daughters would come to the door of my quarantine room and talk to me through the door. And they would put the pictures they drew for me at school, tape them on the door on the outside. And after they went to bed, I would open the door and I would look at the pictures they taped there of me. I can tell you this, I will never go through that again, ever. So this fight, the campaign fight that's coming, I'll probably play on the margins a little bit, but I'm going to be with my daughters. I'm going to be with my wife. I'm going to study theology. I'm going to walk the earth like Kanan Kung Fu, my friend. And God bless everyone, because we need a legitimately elected Republican president. I hope it's Donald Trump, but they damn near killed me, and I'm not giving them another chance.
Well, God bless you, sir. And Michael, I really appreciate your courage and your strength and your passion and your dedication to this country. You are a true patriot, my friend. Again, tell everybody where they can connect with you on social media.
At Michael R. Caputo on Twitter. If they don't shut me down, so far I haven't been canceled there, but hey, it's early in the day. I'll probably tweet something outrageous before I go to bed.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And last thing, what do you think about? Do you have hope for Elon's deal going through? Do you think we'll restore free speech?
I do. And one of two things is going to happen. They put this poison pill in there.
Yeah.
Basically, this disordered board board of directors at Twitter has assured that either Elon Musk is going to win this fight, or they're going to blow up that company. So either Elon Musk wins, or there will be no Twitter. Thankfully, we have Trump Social coming up. We've got Getter for people who are, really want to interact online like that. But Twitter will either be owned by Elon Musk or it will explode.
Agreed. Very well said. Everybody, Michael Caputo, what an honor, sir. I'll continue to pray for you, and let's definitely chat soon, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for telling your story. God bless you.